Hello. Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Nice to see you. Hello there, Shifra. Nice
Hello. Hi.
I'm just testing out my sharing screen, okay? So I'm just doing a little bit of housekeeping. So let me see. Is that what I want? No.
Hi, Linda.
No.
Hi, Shifra.
Hi.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Iris. Hi, Lindsay.
Here, you want to be on screen? No. Oh.
Yay, everything's working. All right, let's let all these nice people in. Greetings, one and all. Boy, guys, nice people coming.
Hi, Jill.
Hi.
I didn't remember.
Welcome, Jill. Pleased to see you.
Hi.
Hi,
Deborah. Hi, Deborah.
All right. Hello.
Hi, Bob.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Craig, you're kind of in the dark.
Am I really?
Yeah.
That's better.
Can you hear me? Hello.
Hi,
Yeah.
Dave.
Hey.
Hi, David.
There's a photo that makes me happy.
Yeah,
Good
nice
to see you,
people that are
Shifra.
here. So, greetings. I think we're going to get started, and other people can join in as they come. All these wonderful people. Welcome, Bruchim Abayim. It's nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. Let us start with a blessing. The blessing is over engaging in Torah, although, of course, we're going to be looking at the Psalms, which is in the writings, but that's a technicality. It's pretty much all Torah in one way or another. So, La'asok b'divrei Torah. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu
La'asok b'divrei
Torah. It's like a blessing round right there. Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign over time and space, who makes us holy with commandments, commands us to engage in the study of Torah. And tonight is all Psalms considered. So a couple things housekeeping-wise. There's so many people here, I'm not sure we're going to be able to go around the proverbial room here and say hello. But everybody should be free, feel free to jump in when you have something you want to say. If you go to manage participants, you see that box at the bottom? You should be able
No, I think only you have that as a host.
No, I've got participants.
Oh, participants. Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
should, you should be able to raise your hand. You can do that with your real hand or with your virtual hand. Okay. And so we'll do our best to navigate this. Secondly, we're going to spend some time introducing the Psalms. I don't presume everybody knows what a Psalm is. You probably all encountered it one way or another. But we'll dive in, kind of introduce you. The introduction will be short. There'll be a lot of things we could say that we won't, but we just want to kind of create a baseline of information. And then we'll look at a couple of Psalms to just familiarize ourselves. And then the real treat of the night is that we're going to interview Dr. Rakowski. about an experience he had with one of his favorite psalms, a psalm that you all know well. It's Psalm 133, Hene Matov. So, Jill, you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to Shifra, you also have become totally dark.
You're kind of dark too.
Very goth.
I am?
I had to move because the internet was unstable. So I'm going to,
Okay. If you're backlit, it's you've
I'm
become
back.
a shadow.
What
and-
I did to
When
help make myself more
I-
enlightened.
I'll turn around like here, wait.
No, it's okay. It's
Yeah, it's better.
oh, there you are, much nicer.
If you
I kind of like
darken
the
it,
backlit though.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
There we go.
lighten your screen, and it should help a little bit.
Ah, okay.
Bob, you have a question. Make sure to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Bob, you're on mute. You have to go to the bottom of your screen and unmute it.
Hey, I'm learning. Yesterday, I was on a project like this, and I discovered up in the corner is a bunch of little dots. If you click on that array of dots, you get everybody's picture on the screen.
Yeah,
That's
does
right.
everybody
Yeah.
have that?
Yeah.
Does everybody have everyone's picture right now?
So it gives me the whole board.
For some
Everybody-
reason, my dots are missing.
Do you have something at the top that says gallery view in the
Yeah,
top
that's
right?
it. Yeah.
Hit that
That's
one.
what it is.
Yeah.
Gallery view shows you everyone, and speaker view shows you really large the person who's speaking.
Exactly. So that's all good stuff. I see Devora put her hand up. So you see her virtual hand there? Can
No.
anybody see that?
I see Devora, I do not see her virtual hand.
You don't?
You have to open up the chat
Oh, I
at the
see.
bottom of your screen.
Open up the chat.
I have chat on the side of the screen.
Yeah, as do I, but I don't see a hand being raised.
I don't see a hand.
Then
Oh.
you click on participants.
Click on
I guess that's
participants.
only important for
Participants. Okay.
Ah, there we go.
And then you'll see a hand by
I
Devorah's
still
name.
don't see a hand.
All right.
At the bottom of
deal
participants is
breaker.
a hand that you can click on.
It's not a deal breaker.
As
Also,
long,
Oh,
as, long as
raise
our
your
moderator
hand.
sees it.
You can
Okay.
do this and I'll
if
see
your
it.
mic is muted and you just want to make a comment, you can press and hold your space bar and then talk, and it turns your mic on. When you
that's
let go of the space bar, it'll turn your mic off.
Oh, that's good to know.
Nice.
Another thing I want to point out to you, you'll see here up in the corner that we're recording this. This is so that I can put this like on YouTube so people can see us studying
Oh, okay, cool.
and can follow the study. Now, at some point, I'm going to share my screen with you so that we can actually look at texts. All right? And I know some of you are sending me messages in the chat box. I will try to keep up with those while I'm teaching. Questions are good in the chat box. So I'll keep a look at the chat box every once in a while to see if there are questions. And last but not least, I understand we have two wonderful visitors from other communities. Lindsay is on the line. I don't know, Lindsay. And then Spike is joining us. So Lindsay and Spike, welcome to you both. There's Lindsay right there.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hello.
Nice to
What
see you.
community?
Welcome to our time. So
I'm actually Roman Catholic, but I've been taking Introduction to Judaism classes
Cool.
at Chicago Sinai. So hi.
wonderful.
Nice.
Lindsay, did you come visit us before for Talmud?
No, I have not.
Oh, not yet anyway. All right. Well, welcome to you all. And Spike, if you're on the line, hello to you. And of course, all our Vatikim, our veterans from Emanuel. Not only am I happy to see you, I feel honored that you came to this virtual classroom, the Zoom room. All righty. So I hope my makeshift study here is neat enough for your likes. Okay, so let's dive in for a second to some basic definitions, etc. So Psalms are also known in Hebrew as Tehillim. Do you know the word Hallel? What is Hallel?
Laws?
No, we sing Hallel or
Hello, are songs of praise.
right during celebrations we sing Hallel. It's a type of prayer, and
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah, exactly. Psalm 150, by the way, Psalm 150, something you know well. We sing songs of praise. So not all Tehillim are songs of praise, but the book takes on that that concept. Let me, in fact, write Tehillim here in the chat box. Let's put that with a capital T. All right, see that in the chat box? Tehillim. All right. So the Tehillim constitute the very first book of the third section of the Tanakh. The Tanakh is Torah, right? 5 books of Moses, Nevi'im, the prophets, and the last book is what? Ketuvim. Let me let somebody.
Ketuvim or writings.
Ketuvim are writings, exactly. Ketuvim. In fact, let me write that here. It's always good. Ketuvim.
Rabbi, would you like me to write it down so you can teach?
If you can, yeah, sure. Sounds good, Cantor. Good idea. So, any idea of when the Psalms were composed? Just wild guess.
Didn't King David write some?
Well,
Or we
maybe,
think he
maybe
did?
not. Maybe,
Okay.
maybe not. It is not conclusive that that King David wrote the Psalms, but let's say for a second that he did. So when might we have seen some of the first Psalms?
Time of the first temple?
Before.
Oh. Okay.
King David lived in the 10th century. BCE.
So that would be when we would see some of the Psalms.
Right. Right. So, well, after a little bit, Solomon more. Okay, but David lived in the 10th century, and for about a 500-year period, plus or minus, we think the Psalms were authored.
Okay, so
Not
King
just by-
David
not
didn't
just
live
by-
for 500 years.
Well, scholars don't believe that King David necessarily wrote the Psalms. Okay?
Okay.
That is something that we associate King David often with Psalms, but not necessarily. It's inconclusive.
Okay.
All right. So we think that the Psalms unfolded over, a 500-year period, not earlier than the 5th century BCE. All right. So some were post-exilic, right, which makes them not earlier than the 5th century BCE. All right. So what kinds of ideas in your experience do Psalms reflect? And we can make a list here.
Love.
They're not as legal as you might think.
As in
Hallel, so
what?
we already covered one of the ideas, right? Hallel are Psalms of praise, right?
Right.
Some Psalms are like the opposite of praise.
There's some angry songs.
Lamentation, Psalms of Lamentation. People are sad, people are troubled, people have anxiety, and the Psalms are drawn to do what? To comfort. We say Psalms when we're mourning, we say Psalms when we're scared. And the Psalms are there to bring us comfort. So when we're not praising, we're comforting. Now, the closest thing I think that Psalms come to like law is they tend to accompany things like the coronation of kings. Not so much coming from a legal standpoint, but sort of marking the coronation of kings and things related to their work. What other kinds of psalms are there? There's songs of praise, which are also like psalms of thanksgiving. So what's really important is that we understand the Psalms as having kind of a wide variety of impact, dealing with all sorts of different kinds of emotions and realities. Some Psalms are written for individuals. Some Psalms are written for communities. Okay, let's stop there and take any questions. That's kind of like a quick and dirty, handy dandy. These are the Psalms. This is mostly what's inside them. Any thoughts or questions?
Rabbi, one question of someone who would like to join us over the phone. She's saying that she can barely hear us. Is there a way, and does anyone know to help her up her volume so she can hear what we're saying?
Is she listening through her, what's she listening through? Which,
She called on her telephone.
and she's got the volume on her phone turned all the way up?
Yeah.
I'm
If
not.
not, I'll keep trying to walk her
I mean,
through.
I'm at max volume on my computer.
The only one I'm having trouble hearing is Cantor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Can everybody hear me okay? Otherwise?
Yes.
Yes.
How about other people on the phone? How are you doing? No answer. Hopefully okay. Shifra, you have your hand up.
I can hear you fine.
Perfect. Good. And you can use your hand thing. And actually, I'm going to take the.
I do this a lot.
Good. You're
For
good.
friends on the phone, if you're trying to talk, you have to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Just heads up.
That's a good point. Thank you for that, Cassandra. I suppose the one other thing, and maybe this also reflects maybe the sense that Psalms are legalistic. Maybe that's vis-a-vis the fact that the Psalms are also about wisdom. So they convey wisdom, and that might be it might seem legal. Anyway,
Aren't the Psalms also, some of them are about love?
yeah, I think you could put it that way. Although I wonder if you're talking more about Shira Shirim, the Song of Songs, which is definitely about love.
Well, that's definitely about love, but
Right. Yeah, I mean, specifically about love, emotional connection.
emotional connection to God, love of God.
I think that there's a strong theological connection. We'll look at some Psalms tonight that reflect a confidence that God will carry people through. The psalmist feels forlorn. The psalmist feels under siege. The psalmist feels full of anxiety, but still believes, despite whatever the situation is, that God will come through. It also expresses doubt about whether God will come through. Whatever the emotion, seems like the Psalms are aware of the broad emotional palette that people have, good times, bad times, all points in between. And there's something for everyone that I think makes the Psalms a very comforting body and a very relatable body of text. Any other questions? Okay, so you don't have to take my word for it. Let's go to some text here. Let's try that. Nope, that's not it. Stop share.
Worked for me.
That's not what I wanted to show you though. Let's try it again. Bear with me a second. There we go. Now let's try this. All right, see that?
Yeah.
Psalm of David.
All right, Psalm of David. All right, so we're going to take a quick look at these two texts just to give you a sense of how they work, what they're dealing with, right? And then we're going to go to our interview of David Rukowski.
No.
All right, and David, I invite you to chime in here on some of these texts as you see fit.
Sure.
So of course, when do we often, most often in your experience, when do we encounter the 23rd Psalm?
Funerals.
Yes.
That's right.
Also, before a funeral, when somebody is dying and close to death.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. And you see it in many religious faiths.
Yes.
I mean, certainly in Christianity and Judaism.
Yes. So,
Our holidays during the Mitzvah service.
okay. Definitely during Yizkor services. All right, so let's kind of look at this in translation and let's figure out what's going on. Now, spoiler alert, in this particular psalm, the psalmist is pretty adamant about faith in God. It's pretty solid. I do not assume that every time we say this psalm, that our faith is as solid as the psalmist. Can we get a volunteer to read? How about Iris, a Psalm of David in English?
A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me to water in places of repose. He renews my life. He guides me in right paths as befits his name. Though I walk through the valley of deepest darkness, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And that is a translation that I have never seen before. I could almost recite this from memory, and it's not exactly these words.
So this is from Sepharia, by the way. So please forgive me for
Online.
the gender specificity. Usually we like to neutralize that. But it came with this Hebrew, it was nice. So we'll work on the translation for later.
I think it's always interesting to read different translations. The thing that really struck out to me, and the reason that I've always thought this psalm was read at funerals, is it's yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And that is not in this translation.
All right. So we could read it that way. The valley of the shadow of death makes sense when you're mourning. This universalizes it a little more. It's not just about the valley of death, but a dark period, a moment of darkness, however that's defined. Could be the moment we're in now is dark in a way.
And Rabbi, how does that line up with the actual translation from the Hebrew?
So chapter 4, verse 4, Gam ki elecha. So although I walk, gay telmavet. Yeah, that's not death.
No.
Mavet isn't death?
Hang on.
I'm
I'll
sorry,
be right back.
Talmavet. Yes.
I've got a biblical dictionary in my bookshelf. I'll be right back.
Mavet, yes. Talmavet.
I have a
is death.
translation that says, "You lead me down paths of righteousness, for that is your nature. And when I walk through the valley, overshadowed by death."
Right. So Tselem, it's like Tselem Elohim, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's sort of the
Or
valley
shadow.
of shadows, technically. Okay. Lo ira, I will not be afraid.
You want to go up or down?
Hmm.
You'll be able to hear it at the door.
Okay.
Hmm.
So, good question, David. Has to do with like the valley of shadows. So it could pertain to death. It could pertain to a dark moment.
Hmm. Hmm.
But verse 4 here is the most important of the four. So I want you to detect for me, if you would, what is the lament here? How would you describe it? What is the specific lament? That you walk in a valley of shadows.
Yeah.
Rabbi, the biblical Hebrew dictionary that I have, the translation is illusion.
Okay. Well, look, it has to do with a visual.
Right. But
So-
I think that's an interesting additional layer.
Yeah. So tell him, the root is tell him.
Right.
Tell him.
Illusion.
And it has to
Cassandra,
do-
that's really interesting in terms of just from a cross-cultural, cross-religious
That's what I thought.
standpoint. When you think about like how Hinduists think about death as illusion, and
Right.
it's-
And if you think about the notion of the resurrection and, the God who redeems the dead. Anyway.
yeah.
By the way, just so you know, I don't see all of you with the screen. So if you have a question, be brave and chime in. I also don't see the, well, I do now see the chat. Is there anything? Can I scroll up to to see
The
the
Talmavet, it's Selim is image.
Correct.
So that's part of the root.
Yeah. So the lament here is the walking in the darkness. Whatever the precise translation sort of captures the lament, regardless, whether it's the valley of the shadow of death or it's the shadow of darkness, right? Or fear and anxiety. This is the lament. The psalmist is walking through this valley and is bringing this lament to bear to God. Here's what I think. But then there's this concept that Walter Brueggemann, who's a great Bible scholar, that I met. I'm not sure he's alive still. Forgive me. But he talked about something called a salvation oracle. This is sort of a resolution that the person is going to walk through this valley, feel this deep lament, but somehow is going to feel that salvation is on the way. And how do we know this person feels that salvation is on the way?
Because he said, for you are with me. Not alone.
No,
And
I
I fear
would
no
back
harm.
that up a little bit, even sooner. Lo
I fear
ira
no
ra.
harm.
Lo ira ra, I shall fear no harm. This is the signal that the person that has the lament prays and feels they will be saved.
But
Not-
Ra is not harm. Ra is evil.
Obviously, they're being poetic here. All right. This translation is not that extraordinary. We just don't use it often.
I was reading the Hebrew.
It's fine. Still, though, I think Ra can be evil. It can also, look, the Rasha in the Passover Haggadah, which is not the same root here, but it's sort of a related concept, is not necessarily evil, right, or wicked. Could be stubborn, could be difficult, could be intransigent, right? Here, they're talking about fearing no harm. Evil, harm, it's synonymous in this case. And what's the resolution ultimately? What's the song of confidence, as Dr. Brueggemann said?
Well, I don't know if this is what you're getting at, Rabbi, but this repeated allusion to God as a shepherd and we as the flock. Your
Yeah.
rod and your staff, they comfort me.
Yeah.
Like
Exactly.
you're here watching over.
So the person's walking through this valley of valley of the shadow of death, is fearing a lot of things potentially, but is not going to fear as much because God the shepherd is on hand, comforting. So we have this pattern of lament, hope, confidence. Right? What is confidence? But sort of hope rewarded. Faith that, or faith that things are going to follow through. It's not just a matter of faith, but that the reality is such. So why do we think about this when we're mourning or when we're afraid, when we have anxiety? Chime in. I can't. Actually, you know what? I can stop sharing.
For hope that someone is taking care of us.
Okay.
That we are, that there is somebody leading us through this place where we can't see. It's the darkest dark there is.
Okay.
And
So,
also,
yeah.
And also that it's it's not permanent. This state of dismay, it's, I think to me it speaks of, it's not a continuous state.
It's temporary.
Right. You're there, you may come back to that valley, but it's not a continuous state.
Right. A valley is part of a system of peaks and valleys,
Mhm.
right? If you walk long enough, you'll start going uphill. All right. Okay. So there is a cycle. By the way, how do we look at this psalm less theologically and more humanly? Right? I don't assume that theology always comforts us in every situation, particularly if we're not even sure we believe in God. All right? I still feel that the psalm is useful because it invites us to think about other ways in which we can talk about our laments, have some faith that we're going to get through it, and then feel confident in the end because we've gotten through it. Yes.
And then there's verse 6.
Well, we're only going to look through verse 4 here. But Jill, please.
I think when we're feeling frightened and vulnerable, we naturally don't want to be alone. We want someone or something more powerful to offer comfort and protection, which against whatever it is that we feel is threatening us and scaring us. So I look at this, I have to say, I've always known this psalm, but when my partner was dying, I read it and experienced it in a completely new way. And that way had to do with just the idea that in facing something terrible or death of a loved one, that you're not alone. And it doesn't, to me, it didn't matter whether it was God or something else. It was almost like whether I believed in God or not. At that moment, the idea of it just felt comforting. And I think it's just a natural impulse always from the time we're very little, and it never goes away, when you're feeling scared and threatened and vulnerable, that we want to connect ourselves to something or someone more powerful that can provide some kind of safety or security. And that's what it means to me.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. And I would only follow up with this notion that your response opens up a lot of ways to read this psalm. While the psalmist has a clear theology, even if his life is filled with doubt, maybe even worried on some levels whether God's going to come through, in this particular case, the psalmist steeled himself, herself, themselves, and is making this passage through this dark space and has some faith that God is there, and then sings a song of confidence. You know, because God is here, I'll be okay. That may not always be the way we approach our losses and our anxiety and our challenges. But the Psalm's still comforting, because who often takes, for many of us, what takes the adequate place of God sometimes when we're in a struggle? Who comes to the rescue?
Family.
Family. Who else?
Doctors.
Doctors. Who else?
Nurses.
Nurses.
Nurses. Who else?
Therapists.
Therapists. Friends.
Clergy.
Clergy. What do all these people have in common?
They're helpers.
They're helpers. They're human beings. It is customary for me as the rabbi often to try and figure out, okay, it's kind of a pole of realities. Some of us are all about God. Some of us are all about humanity. Some of us are somewhere in between. I feel this psalm is written from a theological standpoint primarily, but I don't think exclusively, not in terms of how I read it, interpret it. I feel this is just as powerful a statement of what it can mean to walk in the valley of shadows, but know that there's family nearby, or a best friend that's nearby, or a doctor or a nurse or a therapist or someone else to whom
Yeah,
we
Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers.
look for the helpers.
Right.
Some kind of helper. Some kind of helper. Perfect language.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
really believe that we can all encounter this psalm, this particular one, and Psalm 121 is similar too. I'm not going to, in the interest of time and wanting to get to our special interview, particularly knowing that not all of you can stay on the whole time. I want to get to that interview with David here, Liberty Split. But we can always talk about 121 later. Kind of has a similar impact as Psalm 23. I picked it because I know a lot of people have heard about it before. It's the Esa and I will lift my eyes to the mountains. Who will be my help, right? In this case, it's God. In other cases, it could be some other helper. Okay. Any thoughts? Any additions, corrections, repronunciations?
Rakovsky.
Rakovsky.
There you go. Because no one ever says it right.
Rakovsky.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, I've been saying it wrong the whole time. So can I apologize in front of you and everybody else here?
Yeah.
It's like
I've had a wrecking cough.
I'm sorry. Anyway. All right. So, David, what I'd like to do by way of transition, we're going to look at a much different psalm here, which I've also included here. Psalm 133, we famously know as Hine Matovu Manayim Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. How do we translate that? Devorah? It's like a quiz, pop quiz.
123?
No.
133.
I have that, but I don't.
A song of uplift.
Behold,
Here, yeah.
how
I'll put
good
that-
Yeah.
and how pleasant it is.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
For
So,
brethren to dwell together in unity.
exactly.
Right.
Behold how good it is for us as siblings, brothers and sisters and otherwise to dwell in unity. And it is our welcoming psalm. It is our hospitality psalm. And it's very different than like Psalm 23.
Very.
It's definitely a happier experience. So David, how about we dive into this particular text? Let me not pull up the text just yet. We'll look at it maybe later. Let's talk about your experience with Psalm 133. So you had an interesting experience with this psalm, just sort of randomly one night? Tell us about it.
Well, you just recently, actually, you and I discussed doing something like this, and it was from a pretty ambiguous place. And you told me about what were the kind of things you wanted to get across and why this was timely. And for me, being a clinical psychologist, but also a scholar of religion from my university days, I just sort of let whatever happen. I knew that whatever we're going to talk about tonight is going to feel relevant and it's going to feel timely, and I just have faith in that. So anyway, we're home a lot right now, and I have a lot of time to listen to my stereo equipment, which I never have time to listen to because I'm always working. But now I'm home. And so I've got like 1,000 CDs. Some of them I haven't heard forever. And I pull out my favorite Bernstein CD. It's kind of like right after his death, they released this. Yeah, Schiffer's clapping. This was a great collection of things that he was really famous for conducting, but also writing. So I listened to the Rhapsody in Blue. He's famous for doing Rhapsody in Blue. Listen to the Mahler number 5. And then I go back to the beginning of the CD, which I've always ignored. And what is it? It's the Chichester Psalms, which is one of his original pieces that he wrote. And he is from Massachusetts. So it borrows from his upbringing. It borrows from his Judaic interests and loves. And I didn't remember that was on this disc. I didn't, in any active way, remember that it was part of this collection. I haven't heard it in probably 20 years. And I open up the little booklet, which we so seldom do now with MP3s being popular. And I'm looking at this and like, this is Psalms. This is just what we were just talking about. So I don't think of it as divine intervention as much as the unconscious bubbling up, in my choice of music that night. So I look in the text and I see in English, "Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brethren to dwell together in unity." And man, first that hit me because I thought, this is the time for this psalm. This is, if any psalm, this is the one. It's not about fear. It's not about loathing and evil. It's about all of us together, pulling together to do something. Currently, that project is to beat down this virus and its chances to hurt the more fragile among us. And that's something we're doing together. And we're dwelling together in that unity for the first time in a long time. Then I looked at the Hebrew. And that's when it really struck me. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. I've been singing this since Jewish day school. I've been singing this since Jewish day camp, singing it in congregation with all of you. And it just struck me that we got to focus on this one. Simple though it may be. Yeah. Psalm 133. And that's when I brought it to your attention that I wanted us to unpack this one a little bit.
So when we're done with our questions, we'll go to the text and we'll try to point some things out. Okay. But it may be an obvious question to you and everybody, but where sort of normally have you encountered this psalm? And what sort of meaning did it bring to you when you encountered it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Camp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Camp, it's one of those phrases that can be put to a lot of different tunes.
Yeah.
So singing, dancing, and really what I hear a lot is only the first 2 lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll see there's more text than that.
Yes.
For sure.
It's not nearly as long as some of the others, but there is more text than that.
So, the larger question, I can actually pose this to David, sort of an extemporaneous question that comes up from Iris's perspective, right? We sing Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad with many melodies, right? Not one melody, but several. And the fact that it's a fairly short phrase, many of us may have committed it to memory, lends to a certain, it's almost like a mantra.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a mantra.
Can you speak to sort of the value of it being, kind of short and pithy like that? And what kind
it's a mantra, but what I question along the way Rabbi, is that I never knew what it meant in English. I've been singing it since I was a tot, but never knew that this is what it was about. I just sort of, it's just been in my bones. It's just, this is Judaism. This is Reform Judaism. This is the experience of being with fellow Jews and celebrating and dancing or just praying.
Yeah.
And so to put the words together with the English with the Hebrew together, for me, it all clicked.
Right. And so the early message I'm gathering is, I just know this as Hebrew, don't really know the meaning, know it's part of my, catalog of music. Show up at the shul, hear Hine Matov, often at the beginning of a service, right, as some kind of psalm of welcome. Maybe that's it.
And the other thing is, I didn't know it was a psalm.
You didn't know it was a psalm, right?
No, I don't know how I would have known that it was a psalm.
Okay.
Go ahead. I didn't know it was a psalm either. But in terms of your question about, where have you encountered this? For some reason, I don't know why, I feel like I always have known, or since at least I've been an adult, what the English was. But I think for me, one of the most striking examples of this was I was at a, not only dwelling together, but bringing people together. I was at a shiva in a very large house, and there were there must have been 100 people there, and they were in different rooms. And there was a rabbi who wanted to start a minyan, and it was nearly impossible to bring this group together. So the rabbi just started singing Hine Matov U'Manayim. And what happened was the people who were immediately around her immediately joined in, and it was like a wave. The more people joined in, the more people, until eventually, and in a very short order of time, all the people in all the rooms were singing the same thing. And the group of people there had become a group, a congregation. She was able to start the minyan. And it was a very powerful experience of this song in an unexpected time and place, bringing people together. I thought it was brilliant on the part of the rabbi.
So I want to follow up your comment, Jill, and it speaks to David's reflections on unity. Psalm 133, according to Dr. Brueggemann, is an eloquent affirmation of family or tribal solidarity.
So
the opening line celebrates an experience. The conclusion identifies the experience as a blessing. That is, coming together in a spirit of unity and solidarity is not only pleasant, but it's a blessing. And the fact that we have the Hine Matov part, although there's other parts of the psalm, pretty committed to memory, or at least it draws us in. We know, we identify with that. Beautiful prayer. It has a way of doing its job, pulling us together, creating a sense of connection and unity. Yes, Cassandra.
I've been reading about Kabbalah meditative practices, and one of the tenets of Kabbalistic meditation is that the Hebrew meaning is somehow intrinsically linked to the way that the words are formed in our bodies, so that even if we don't necessarily understand what it is that we're saying, because of the way that it alters our breathing, if you get into the sort of cantillation of Torah, you somehow can sort of embody the meaning of the Hebrew through, this is where it gets a little woolly for me, like mystical osmosis. But hearing these stories, that makes me think of what I just read, is that, like, I don't know, maybe there is something to that like when you chant a psalm or a piece of Torah, that somehow, because of the way it modulates your breath, it gets you into a space where you can receive the meaning of the words, even if you don't intellectually understand them.
Well, it's a nice way of thinking about it. On some levels, David, you talked about kind kind of achieving a new intentionality. First, you encountered this as a Hebrew prayer. You encountered it through musical, an aural, A-U-R-A-L experience, right? It fills you, kind of, you identify with it, some shape, way, or form. And then you have this, I don't know if it's serendipitous, but kind of unique moment where you are preparing for this experience, and you are a music lover and you come across an old CD that you've listened to parts of it, but not necessarily this part, and it invites you into an opportunity to look at the language, which transforms the meaning for you.
And actually, it was very specific. I took this disc out to hear the Rhapsody in Blue recording because I had new speakers and I wanted to really kind of hear something familiar played, and hear how the piano sounded and hear how the clarinet sounded. So it didn't occur to me, of all the things I pulled out, that this one had a psalm on it. How many pieces of music do I have that have psalms on them? Not many. I could tell you that.
So it's really great because you encounter this transformation, even if it's small but important. It happens through a hobby, right? A love of music.
A love, yeah.
So then, Jill, you bring up the way in which the prayer takes on new meaning, the psalm takes on new meaning as kind of a community organizing exercise. And so people don't have to shush everyone to get focused. They use this psalm as a way of organizing and bringing people together to focus their attention. All right. Again, another way of lending intentionality to the psalm and finding a personal connection, appreciation for it. And then Cassandra, you bring up the notion that actually you can experience this not just through listening and through practicing, but you can even embody. The mystics say we can embody this psalm in such a way that it brings us meaning. Now, all these elements are very powerful. And I just want to share one more thought from Dr. Brueggemann. I'll just read the paragraph here. Psalm 133 reflects Israel's capacity to appreciate the common joys of life and to attribute them to the well-ordered generosity of Yahweh, who he refers to as God, or God referred to as Yahweh. One can only hypothesize about the time such a poem was formed or used. Maybe a reflection of a family reunion, of the gathering of the tribe, of any social occasion, of brothers and sisters, I'll add, clan leaders being together without conflict. The voice may be that of a relieved elder, anxious that the younger generation not destroy itself in conflict. The poem anticipates the solidarity and harmony of all humanity as it lives without defensiveness in a creation benevolent enough to care for all. So, David, do you feel more equipped now that you know the meaning of this psalm that you've heard about all your life? I mean, do you feel ready to kind of use it in your life? And how will you use it going forward?
I think the first chance operationally that I will have is my daughter's bat mitzvah this month, which is going to be done in a whole new way, in a whole new world here in the bunker of my home. But bat mitzvah she will be. And I think that this is a psalm that we will incorporate in that milestone, in that achievement of hers, in that moment of Jewish claiming of her heritage. And it will mean something different to me. It will ring in my ears differently. It will have a different intention to it. I think that's important.
And what new meaning will it give to the notion of dwelling?
Well, we're in my dwelling, for one thing. And we are dwelling together, but in an electronic way. We'll be dwelling with, scores of other people who we wouldn't be able to dwell with until this technology was here and in front of us, this streaming technology, this conference technology, because there's no other way in a COVID crisis for us to come together than this. And so how pleasant it is for us to dwell together.
Yeah. In this newish sort of way, newish from a kind of a extent standpoint, right? We don't
That's right.
usually interact this way. For some of us, like a Shechianu moment here. Some of you I haven't seen in a while because I've been at home and you've been at home, and we've been trying to stay out of trouble. And we come together for this beautiful Shechianu moment, right? Which gives us a new way, not only of connecting with one another, but redefining what it means to dwell in with a sense of unity and spirit. So what I want to do before we move on, David, you and I can take a look with everyone of this text, and we'll see that there's more than just the verses that we always memorize. Can you see that? Okay.
You're on 33.
Rabbi, pardon me, I just want to say I have to go. But thank you.
You added in, was that Jill?
That's
Yeah,
Jill.
I just want to say goodbye.
Jill, thank you. You added so beautifully tonight. We're so glad you could come. Continue to be on the mend.
Thank you.
And we'll look forward to having you join us again. Say hi to Meryl for us.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Jill. Feel better.
So let's have a look here. Let's see, David, please read for us the entire song in English.
A song of ascents of David. How good and how pleasant it is that brothers dwell together. It is like fine oil on the head running down onto the beard of Aaron that comes down over the collar of his robe. Like the dew of Hermon that falls upon the mountains of Zion. There the Lord ordained blessing, everlasting life.
So how does this lend to the meaning of the experience, right? This question's for you, David, and everyone else for that matter. This is kind of new learning. By the way, for what it's worth, it's not like I have studied this particular psalm backwards and forwards. You know, I know Hine Matov. I know that's a psalm. I happen to know that ahead of time.
This is a very visceral, very sensuous passage. You know, this is very much the embodiment to the sort of the feeling of embodying a body. You know, there's beards and robes and dew, and it's very human in its embrace of nature, I think. And I've never seen this passage before. It's really quite impressive, actually.
Yeah. What's sort of the ultimate gift here of the dwelling in unity?
And when can create kings, right? The oil on the head is an anointing ritual for a king or for Mashiach, right? And that
it's very messianic in that way, very redemptive in that way. But even bringing it down to earth a little more, right? Not all of us are Messiah, right? And yet we can relate to this.
Well, because the next sentence, so I was thinking the same thing, that, you know, the anointing piece, and then likening the anointing to the dew falling on the mountains.
Okay.
As a sort of anointing as well, anointing of an environment. So an analogy of that, the good and pleasantness of people being together is like an anointing.
Yeah. Okay. So right. So there's a sense of not only there's like a communal salvation here, right? That the dew is in its own way, it's like a healing dew. It's a saving dew. And by the way, how do we get to that dew? Remember, it's a song of ascent. Here Hamalot.
Climb the mountain.
Yeah, the mountain here is key. There's sort of an elevation that takes place when we make this climb Is it a literal climb? Not really. We're not climbing Mount Hermon. We're stuck here. So we make a climb by redefining how we connect and dwell, right? By the way, if we back up, Shira Malot, LeDavid, Hine, Matov, Umanaim, Shevet. Shevet, that's what it means to sit or dwell. So it looks like everybody's sitting, but in your own space. And yet we are studying together, and indeed how pleasant and wonderful and good it is. I don't know if it feels like fine oil running down your proverbial beard.
I don't want that.
I realize that might not be such a great metaphor for all of us. I don't have a beard.
It's so sensual, the imagery, and
That's
I
right.
don't mean that it's not sexual, but it's
Right.
very visceral. It's
Sensual, right? Like you were talking. There's an
pleasure.
embodiment here,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Cassandra,
it's
you and David
actually
talk about this
all the
embodiment.
most pleasant things are as good as when we get together. No matter how good something else is, us getting together is that good when we actually get together.
Right. And if we go to the end of this selection, what is the ultimate outcome? Because of
Live
this
forever.
ability to dwell. Well, right. Blessing and everlasting life. I don't know what everlasting life means really, but I do know that there's something that has eternal value for us, for however long we live, forever or a little less than forever.
Yeah, I don't read it as the everlasting life of one human, but of the people, right? I mean, that's sort of, and maybe that's a modernist way of looking at it, but
No, because remember, what do Psalms do in part? They speak to individuals, but also the community.
mhm.
And in this case, what do they call this kind of psalm? He calls, Dr. Brueggemann calls this a psalm of orientation.
Mm.
Now, what do you think that means? What's the orientation here?
Up.
Go ahead.
Of going up, of being up and uplifted.
Another
Yeah.
word might be context. Puts it into another kind of context, orientation.
There's an upward motion. We know all the orientation pieces. It's upward, the song of ascent. It
also
orients
orients
us to David, although it doesn't necessarily mean that this was written by David. One would be tempted, right, Iris, to say, hey, this is David's song because it's a song of David.
Right.
So is
It's
the one
actually
that-
to David.
Right.
Hmm.
So I don't know if it's that important whether we attribute it to David or some other author. What we're really trying to do is figure out what the orientation is here, right?
The orientation is rising up, it's going up the mountain, but also coming down, the fine oil coming down the head and the beard.
So the ascent and the descent are filled with blessings, with salvation, redemption, healing, happiness. This is a happy psalm, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sure.
So this person is not walking in a shadow of death.
Right.
There's no lament here. This is a celebration.
Somehow he's turned off the control. Oops.
What happened?
Trying to-
Did I? All right.
I
So
don't know.
let me stop sharing, and then I can see everybody. Who can check in, see how everybody's doing. Stop share. All right, here you are.
So
David, any thoughts you want to add?
I mean, I think it's orienting in the sense that it tells you where you need to be, you know, to rejoice and to be in the embrace of God is to be enjoying that I guess in French, the word would be jouissance, this sort of like abundance of pleasure and connection. And that's what I get from that psalm.
So let me ask you a different question, and then we can hear from everyone else as well. All right, so we looked at first at Psalm 23, which we say when we're mourning or we have anxieties, things are scary, things are dark. Clearly, it is a psalm of salvation and ultimately confidence amidst anxiety. We can see why it is a comforting psalm in that respect. Here, this one is really all positive and happy, and I wonder sort of how you read it as a citizen living through COVID-19, how we all read it as citizens living through COVID-19. What opportunities does this psalm offer us? Can you think about that, David?
Yeah,
that matter?
I think just the idea of ascending. I mean, just that we get out of our own pity party. I mean, one of the wonderful things about a global crisis, not to sound cruel or cold, because many people will suffer it in ways far worse than I will. But there's the idea that even whether you're talking about business or being on lockdown, you're not alone. This isn't about you. This isn't about something you've done or haven't done. This isn't about a failure, a personal failure, or a lack of foresight. We're all just screwed for a little while, and it's okay to kind of be together in that global screwing and kind of rise above ourselves and see, where can I be helpful? Where am I most needed? Right? Where can, aside from my pity and my woes, where can I fit into the puzzle of making this go down easier for someone else? And that's a kind of a ascension.
David?
Almost like a call to action, right? That we're called to dwell, and we're going to have to maybe redefine that way of dwelling, but we're called to somehow dwell together and bring pleasantness as a result, and to seek blessing despite the constraints, despite the serious concerns, despite the anxiety. There are other psalms we can read to help us deal with our anxiety.
Yeah.
But there are also psalms that allow us to celebrate and to reaffirm life and to make a difference and be a force for good. Who else wants to add? Don't be bashful.
I was just going to say that David's been seeing other things than I've been seeing, because a lot of what I see is, we're all being punished and the Messiah is coming.
Yeah.
Oh, well, interesting. I mean, I guess, there are those who see this as pretty apocalyptic, and that at some point we'll see see Elijah on his donkey, riding on down, heralding the coming of the Messiah. Look, I mean, in some ways we could use a Messiah, but I have news for you. It's a really good book. It's entitled "There Is No Messiah and It's You." There is no Messiah and it's you. Rabbi Levine in New York wrote that book. Maybe Hine Matov is the notion that we can ascend from these dark, shadowy places, these dark, shadowy valleys, and ascend a peak, right? And bring our own salvation, right?
I think
not
I
wait
see that.
around for some mythical Messiah to come and save us. That'd be nice, but we'll be waiting a long time. I think we got work to do now. Who else wants to share?
I think Rachel had her hand
Yes,
up.
please, Rachel.
Can you just push a button? There's brownies in the oven. That's another way.
You got to figure out how to share those virtually.
But no, I just was thinking a lot about the juxtaposition of one of the Psalms was the valley and the other was the mountain. Also thinking about, I've been in choirs all my life, so I'm very familiar with the Chichester Psalms. I sang them several times as children's choir as a kid and as an adult. But then also the setting of this psalm, lift mine eyes to the mountain. The whence cometh, isn't it the same one No, that's a different one. I thought, is that the one that was underneath? Was that 121 that was right underneath?
Yeah, we didn't cover that because I felt
I saw a glimpse of that one, which is another mountain one, where whence cometh, we lift mine eyes to the mountains, whence cometh my help. So there's lots of mountain good, valley bad.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Although I mean, I would defend Psalm 23 as you know, this person's walking through the valley, and there's that sense of salvation. It's an oracle of salvation, is the technical term, I guess. And it speaks of somebody who is walking, you know, in the darkness, but is kind of inoculated from it.
Right. So it's almost like the darker the better. If you're trying to impart that that feeling, the darker the better, the more dire the better.
You know,
to convey that feeling of
yeah,
faith.
I do think there is some. There seems to be this powerful focus of the significance of being on a mountaintop as being salvational. Although even in Psalm 133, when we go down the mountain, what happens? The dewdrops come down, the mountain dew, all right? And it's salvation, you know, it's redemptive too, as they're descending, right? So not only ascending, but descending. It's both. I mean, I think that's the power of the Psalms, whether our lives are going really well and deserve thanksgiving and celebration and appreciation, we have Psalms. And when our lives aren't going so well or are going terribly, we have the Psalms as well. Yes, Shifra.
I was just saying it's a journey, and we go through, and I love it, darker is the better, and this brings us to a point. If we remember, we can dwell together, and remember the pleasure it'll be afterwards. We can make it through the valley and make it better by being a helper and doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the appreciation here, Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad, is to recognize that, you know, we have a call to action. It's not just sitting around and being happy and appreciative that we're sitting around. It's that we have done whatever we could to pull each other up from the valleys and to support each other in times of goodness and sadness. It's God's job, I think, in primary theology, primary orientation of the Psalms between the psalmist and God, or the psalmist and his community and God. But I would like us to expand that in the interest of full inclusion, because I never assume what people believe or don't believe. If you believe in God, great. If you don't, no problem. We all belong here. We're all dwelling together. And so we need to figure a way to read these Psalms as a community in a way that kind of reaches us all. Anybody else want to share something? Yes, Bob, please.
Why do we need God on the mountaintop when we need him or her in the valley now?
How do we know God's not in the valley?
Yeah, well, we're talking about like going up to the mountain. There's where God is. And we're going to have all a great time. Right now, down in the shit,
Yeah.
this is where we need God.
This is why I started with the 23rd Psalm. Not because I wanted to start in a dark place, but I wanted to reflect that, you know, God is not only in the valley, but on the mountaintop. We've looked at, you know, we've talked about two texts tonight other than Psalm 133 that have God on the mountaintop. So you might think it's like 2-to-1, but I think that the orientation, the theological orientation of the Psalms is God is on the mountaintop and God is in the valley. In both. God is where there's the redeeming dewdrops and in the crap and the bad luck and the bad fortune of life. And in the COVID virus, you know, somehow there's salvation. Now, I don't presume that everybody believes that. That's why I feel like we need to also understand this as our own call to action. Right? We pray as though everything depends on God, but we act as though everything depends on
Everything
us,
depends on you.
right?
Yes.
So to me, the Psalms covers both those teachings, right? And remember, I also said there is no Messiah; it's you. So the Psalms can be good pep talk, right? If life feels dark, don't just think of God as a light. Think of your own goodness, your own Menschlichkeit as a light, shines into the darkness of those shadows. And who's doing the dwelling, by the way? Siblings, brothers and sisters and people, feeling a sense of unity. Maybe it's a God-filled unity for the psalmist. For some of us, it's a God-filled unity, but maybe for others of us, it's just people getting together and seeing the good in life. Other thoughts? How are we doing? Do you want to go till 8:30 or are you tired?
I'm not.
We've got 15 people still, so that's pretty good. We started with like 17. So,
So most of us are still there.
all right. Since Bob Fields was nice enough to submit a text, you're all very nice. Bob submitted another text that we'll take a look at. And Adele submitted a text. She was on earlier, I think. Is she still here now? I don't think so. But
I
Adele.
think she's a 205 number.
Is she? I thought I saw her physically. Well, anyway, Adele also submitted 133. So let us find our Psalms again. Okay. Hang on. Share text. Hang on. Nope.
We might be talking about different Adeles, but Adele Barris is on.
Yes. So Adele wrote me and said, "Oh, I really love Psalm 133." So I said, "Oh, that's great. So does David Rakowski." All right, hang on. I'm trying to figure out what I did with my share screen.
It should be at the bottom.
Yeah, for some reason I lost it. Now I have it. Okay.
And just one other hint, you were concerned before about not seeing everybody when they were along the side as well. There's even when they were vertical, there's always an arrow that you can scroll through and see everybody.
That's true. Thank you. All righty. Bob, you want to read us Psalm 33?
Sure. Let me get to it. Sing out to God, all the righteous, to the honest. Praise brings pleasure. Thank the Holy One with the harp. With the 10-string lyre, make melodies. I'm reading from my book. I'm not reading.
That's fine. That's fine. Happy to hear the other translation.
Okay. Sing to the source of life a new song. Make music out of your sadness. The blast forth with joy. For your word is straightforward. All your deeds are evidence for faith. You love righteousness and justice. Divine kindness flows the earth. Do I read more?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
All right. So here we have yet a different kind of message.
I have to say, the reason why I suggested this is I found one that was arguing, I thought, with God. I says, no, I can't submit that. I'll submit this. So that's what drove me to this one.
Can we in English isolate, and we'll have to use this particular translation. Can we determine all the imperative verbs in this 5-verse passage? Just say them out loud.
Sing,
acclaim,
praise,
praise,
sing,
sing again,
sing,
play.
Right. Okay. So these are the kinds of imperatives that are reflected in this psalm. What does an imperative usually indicate?
It's a command.
All right. A command. What else?
Now.
A request.
Kind of there's a certain orientation. It's another psalm of orientation. The orientation is like down the road, in the past. No, imperative. There's an importance in the moment. To sing and to praise and to sing again and to play. And why? Because God is righteous.
You know,
go ahead.
I was going to say, what's so interesting about this, maybe this translation or just what the intention here is just that little flourish of his every deed is faithful. He loves what is right and just. The earth is full of the Lord's faithful care. That's not, was Bob reading a different translation?
Yeah, read yours again, Bob.
The end in particular, Bob?
Are you there, Bob?
I'm here. This is a Pamela Greenberg translation.
Go ahead and
the very end of that where it says the Lord,
like the last verse or whatever.
For your word is straightforward. All your deeds are evidence for faith.
That's it.
All
That's interesting.
Evidence for faith.
Evident, because faith, the whole point of faith is it's the belief in something for which you have no evidence. Right? And so how it's just an interesting, it just seems out of place. I don't know if that's a translation that is more modern or less, but
2010.
Yeah, that struck me when I heard it, because I don't think I hear that language a lot in our liturgy. Wondered what everyone else thought about that.
Yeah, any thoughts?
I'm going to the Hebrew, and I'm hung up. So, but yeah, I am going straight to the Hebrew.
So here's another question to consider. Shiru lo shir chadash in verse 3. You see that? Shiru lo shir chadash. What I find interesting about this is this psalm calls for not only for one to sing, right, but to sing a shir chadash, a new song. Cantor Friedman, I was wondering how that moves you. What is the command here for new song?
It's great. As you know, Rabbi, this is not the only psalm that tells you to sing a new song. And I think what's wonderful about it is it allows for the self-discovery of where you're at right now. So that new song is wherever you're coming in that moment in time. And it also frees you up to know that whatever you sing to God can't be wrong, right? God is accepting of whatever is there in your heart. It's not, it doesn't have to be the same old.
Isn't that interesting? So like an old song would be, might imply some level of experience with it, some capacity to sing that old song. And I suppose on some levels that's fine. We have a lot of songs that we know for a long time, right? Even like Hine Matov. But as David taught us tonight, sometimes you come to an old song with a new understanding. And so it becomes a new song.
That can happen with prayers too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what is the potential of a new song in our time now? Right. This is not God is here to comfort me and lift me from the valley. This is very active and powerful and full of imperatives and it's like in the present, and we have the ability to sing a new song. What's the new song we need to sing in this age?
We will get through it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the way that we're grateful might be different. So
How might we be grateful differently?
I found myself every day I'm trying to take a walk to get out of the house and to get away from my computer. And I actually was concentrating and taking pictures of a bush budding because my life is slowed down to the extent that I can admire such things. So there's a real blessing in that.
Excellent.
I feel grateful that I have a home and I have money and I can get through this. I wonder about people who don't.
Right. It can be easy for some of us to say, this too shall pass, right? And that's easy to say when it's warm and you've got what you need to eat, you're not putting yourselves in harm's way. We have to remember that not everybody is completely safe.
Right.
Not everybody is completely secure. There are people
And we can't
unemployed
protect.
and full of anxiety. We have our own anxieties, but it softens the blow really when you have stability.
Which really brings us back to the main theme of why we're even here. I mean, why you called this this Torah study, Rabbi? This idea that these psalms are through history, have been a cushion, a salve, a balm of some sort in times of anxiety and crisis. And right now, it seems like as appropriate a time as any to be reaching for them, because we're all anxious in some way. We don't have to have food insecurity to be anxious about what's happening right now. Some of us may just fear loss of health, loss of norms, and others may be quite afraid that civilization will fall apart and all of our safeties within that. So this is, I suppose, one answer.
That is an exquisite statement. In fact, I have one short PS, and then we're going to let your beautiful, beautiful wisdom stand as the closure. Other than, I think we'll sing Hine Matov. I've got the guitar right by my right hand. But I would only add, dear David, and thank you, Kol Kavod, for your wisdom, and everyone else as well. I feel like we've taught each other a lot of wisdom, a lot of the Psalms wisdom. We have an opportunity to make our losses matter. If we are walking through a valley, and if we are suffering a loss of one kind or another, our traditions give us lots of depth and wisdom to enable us to make these losses matter. So if that's something that we did today, to equip you to make whatever losses we are confronting matter, then it's a blessing. So we can do the rest of the housekeeping later in terms of whether you'd like to study some more. We can do more Psalms if you'd like. We could do other things. We do have this class, All Psalms Considered. It sounds like we should do a few more Psalms. And you'll let me know how you feel. In fact, you can even write in the
in the chat.
In the chat, you can tell me what you think. And I saved the chat, so I'll save everybody's comments. And we'll finish with Hine Matov, okay? In fact, we'll do the version that has the English. How nice and how pleasant for friends to dwell together in virtual space. All right? You'll see what I mean when we get there. And we won't do the Elvis version. We'll keep it mellow.
Oh.
The whole whole. I don't know if my guitar's in tune. Hopefully it's good enough. How nice and how pleasant for friends to be together. How nice and how pleasant for friends to be together. Friends, first let me thank David Rakowski for just a wonderful contribution, your wisdom, your gentleness, your depth. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us for this meaningful study. Stay tuned. We'll be doing a number of things. We're trying to get out ahead of our learning curve, but you know, we're percolating all sorts of ideas that just sort of pop up. So not going to have a ton of runway all the time. I hope that's not too much trouble. People have been telling me, Rabbi, just fill the calendar. I've got time, and I'm bored. So if that's you, just keep looking for stuff. We're going to do stuff for Passover next. I think I'll do a little bit of a 101 on Passover. And Cantor's working on a kind of a how-to workshop that we'll put online as well. And then Tuesday night at 7, we're going to do sort of a pre-Passover, I don't know what we're calling it.
Okay.
Prep.
Preparing for Passover, poems, missives, and songs.
Exactly. It's more of a artistic kind of experience, more for your heart than your head. Today, hopefully, was head and heart, but for sure, Tuesday night will be more about the heart. Okay.
All right, cool.
So
Obviously, we have no class next Wednesday.
no class next Wednesday.
Okay.
Anyway, any other thoughts before we call it a night?
This was great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Lila Tov, David, thank you.
Lila Tov.
Thanks for the
Stay
opportunity.
well,
This was a lot of
struggle
fun.
on. Good night, all. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Mom.
Thank
See
you.
This is Pesach.
Okay.
All right. Night and night, everybody. See you later.